Good afternoon. You are watching the Every Choice Counts podcast, and I'm your host, Dara Berger. And for those of you who don't know me, I'm the author of the book, How to Prevent Autism, documentary filmmaker, health coach, and the mother of 2 children, one of whom has autism. And I am very excited about today's guest, Dr. Jason William Bergerhouse, otherwise known as Dr. J. He's a chiropractor and the owner of the Thrive Spine Center, located in Folsom, California. He is a well-known and respected health and medical freedom activist, in addition to being one of the nation's leading chiropractors. Dr. Bergerhouse is an outspoken and passionate health advocate online and in his community. He lives with his wife, Ashley, and their daughter, and he has written the book Designed to Thrive, and that is the subject of what we'll be speaking with him about today. So welcome, Jason. I'm so excited to speak about your book and have you on the show today.
Yes, I'm truly excited as well.
So tell me about, the book was great. First of all, I took away so many wonderful things from it. What made you decide to write this book?
Well, a couple of things. Number one, I've always wanted to write a book, so it's always been in the back of my mind or on my bucket list, so to speak. And so I've always wanted to write a book. I started writing, and I just never really gave it due diligence and really gave it all I got and started writing every day. It was the birth of my daughter that finally gave me the inspiration, the motivation to, finish writing this book. And I just set out to write this book. And every morning I'd wake up at 4 a.m. in the morning and just start writing, and I get a paragraph here, a page here, things like that. And it finally all came together. But my big motivation for why is I feel like there's too many Americans, especially, that are caught up in surviving, and they're definitely not thriving. And as a chiropractor now of 14 years, I've seen a lot of people that just aren't thriving in life, and they have all this potential, and it's like they're squandering all this potential, and they're not functioning at their optimum. And I realized that your physiology plays a big role in your psychology. And so I went from this very mechanistic view as a chiropractor to more of a holistic, all-encompassing view as a chiropractor. It kind of slowly progressed over that 14 years. And I realized that as people started to get healthier, they became better versions of themselves. Their psychology shifted. I even have had patients get off their antipsychotic medications, all because they're functioning at a higher level. Therefore, they don't need a dependency on the pharmacopoeia anymore, right? So people would get better, and they would transgress into a new version of themselves, into the version that I think God originally designed them to be. They would function at a higher level, think better thoughts, become better parents, become more productive members of society. And so I decided to write a book to inspire people to first shift their paradigms, shift their thoughts, shift their thinking, shift their mindset, and then 2, take the appropriate action steps to achieve a life of abundance, and I wanted to write it in such a way that it was actually inspiring to people, that they wouldn't be reading a bunch of doctor language and all this, but they would actually feel inspired to move forward and take appropriate action steps. And, it took me 2 years to write it, and I finally finished it.
Well, I thought it was great. I love that you put a lot of your own examples in there, and it was laid out really well. And you bring up some very interesting things. In the very beginning of the book, you're talking a lot about people who are surviving. And a lot of times they're surviving on pharmaceuticals, food that isn't very nutrient dense. And you bring up this word polypharmacy, which I really appreciated. Tell us what polypharmacy is and why you talk about that in the beginning of the book.
Yeah, so one of the travesties in life is, in my opinion, is when somebody ends up on pharmaceuticals because of their negative lifestyle habits. So basically, the majority of the problems and issues that people have are self-induced. It's not because they, were born with bad genes or bad luck. It's because they've lifestyled themselves into these diseases like diabetes, cancer, and heart disease. So oftentimes what will happen is they'll end up on a medication. That medication causes them to have side effects, and therefore they need more medications to combat the side effects of that original medication they started taking. And it's a vicious cycle. So that one drug leads to two drugs, four drugs, and then it just it's like compound interest. It just grows. I even had a patient come in one time. She was on 36 drugs and medications. Now, this lady was hundreds of pounds overweight. So I'm not arguing with the fact that there's not some sort of credence to, managing your symptoms for a temporary basis via drugs. But I also feel like in the back of that person's mind, they should have a strong plan of action for hey, I need to remove the interference in my life. And my goal should be able to get off these drugs as quickly as I can by removing the things that are causing me to be unhealthy and adding the good things into my life that are going to, support me, support my life and help me to thrive in life. And so, polypharmacy is when, the average person ends up on more than one medication. They end up on all these drugs, and there's really no science to show how one drug might interact with another drug, and that creates a whole new chemical compound. It's, there's no real science to show that it's even healthy to be taking more than two medications and the infinite number of chemical reactions that can happen. We don't know, right? And they call it science, but it's really not science. There's no real science to support that, So anyway, that's what polypharmacy is. And the average person's on multiple drugs, and that's the sad thing in this country.
Right. I know you talked a lot about, which we all know, that they're symptom suppressors and they don't get to the root of the problem, and then they can create more, including death. And you discussed a lot about that. But I love the word interference. And pharmaceutical drugs are only one type of interference that you talk about that keeps your body thriving. Can you talk about what interference is and the things that cause interference in thriving?
Yeah, absolutely. So in my book, I wrote about, I split it into three sections. So mind, body, and spirit. And those three things are intimately connected with each other. So the idea of interference is interference could be what we expose ourselves to on a regular basis. It could be the negative thought patterns that we have that are creating interference and causing us to be unhealthy. We know that thoughts can create high blood pressure. Thoughts can actually increase your pain if they're negative and things like that. So interference in your life is anything that would interfere with your body functioning the way that it's supposed to. And so take something like the foods that we eat, right? Well, a lot of Americans don't eat enough of the good stuff, and they eat too much of the bad stuff. And the bad stuff, unfortunately, will interfere with their body's ability to function at a normal capacity. So if you take something like most packaged foods, right, are loaded with a lot of artificial ingredients and preservatives that cause major interference in the body and would cause somebody to be unhealthy. And so the argument is, well, a lot of those chemicals and things, well, they're in trace amounts. But you can have a little bit of bad every single day, which adds up to be a lot of bad years later. And that can lead to somebody, manifesting cancer or heart disease or diabetes or, any number of diseases out there, weird pain syndromes, chronic fatigue syndrome, things like that. And unfortunately, the person doesn't conclude with the fact that, hey, maybe my diet has led to the way I'm feeling now. They don't really put two and two together. Sometimes they do, but a lot of times they don't. They continue to live out the negative lifestyle habits. They go to the doctor, they get their prescription, and are on those prescription meds for the rest of their lives, when their problem easily could have been taken care of if they removed the interference and started adding good things into their life. But there's many different, kinds of interference. My mom used to clean our house with all the, the chemical products like Pine Sol. I remember, walking in the kitchen after she cleaned the linoleum floor with Pine Sol, and my eyes would start burning from the ammonia in the Pine Sol. I remember being a kid, and we put our socks on after she would dust, and we'd be able to skate around the house like we were on ice because the pledge would be on the carpet. It's so toxic we could skate on our carpet floor. Interference could be like the television people watch, because, the television causes them to think about the world in a particular way. And that worldview can be completely skewed, high stress, right? That causes major interference, and that leads to high blood pressure and tight muscles, and can lead to chronic fatigue and things like that. So in order to get better, one of the most important things that we need to do is remove the interference. We need to look at every single aspect of our lives and question whether or not what we're doing is actually supporting our health, or if it's interfering with us being as healthy as possible.
Now, I liked a lot of the things you talked about. You had some great quotes in the book. You cannot poison the body back to health. I thought that was a great one. And you talk about masking the problem. So let's talk about, because most people that we know are on one or more pharmaceuticals. I mean, because you go to the doctor and that's like your prize. Like when you're a kid, you go to the toy chest and you get a little toy. But for adults, we walk away with that little piece of paper that I never fill, but most people do. What is the problem with masking the symptoms?
Well, it just perpetuates the problem, right? It's just putting a Band-Aid on. It's just a temporary solution. Almost, I hate to say it, but like a quick fix, but it's really not fixing anything. It's just masking the problem, and therefore the underlying cause of the problem never gets corrected. So, you take, for example, somebody with high blood pressure who has a poor diet, they're not exercising enough, and they're way too stressed out. Rather than dealing with the cause of their high blood pressure, they're merely taking the blood pressure meds, masking the blood pressure. So all their numbers are within normal limits, but they haven't taken care of the root cause of the issue, right? For every effect, there's a cause. So rather than asking themselves what's causing the high blood pressure in the first place, they're just taking the meds to mask the symptoms so they can continue to live their negative lifestyle behaviors. And maybe they just want to continue to, eat and be merry, so to speak. They want to continue living the lifestyle. They're not willing to give it up. And if that's the case, that's a sad state of affair, in my opinion. But for most people, they're just really not taught the tools necessary in order to be healthier. They go to their doctor. Their doctor spends 15 minutes with them, maybe that. They've waited 2 hours to spend 15 minutes with their medical doctor, who has very little education and background on holistic health, very little training on nutrition or anything like that. They're trained to diagnose and prescribe. And that's the unfortunate thing about living in this country. We're one out of 2 countries that gets direct-to-consumer drugs ads, and, people watch these commercials and it's ask your doctor if such and such is right for you, and so we just need a complete mindset shift, and I think more people are waking up now to that. But, as a chiropractor, I've ran into so many patients that, kind of have this victim mentality, and they've been taking drugs and medications for years. I even had patients tell me, well, I'm healthy, all my numbers are normal, and I'm looking here, and they're taking 5 meds, and they think they're healthy because their numbers are within normal limits. And it's like, okay, well, if you woke up tomorrow and you didn't need these drugs to manage your diseases anymore, and you were disease-free, would you consider yourself abnormal? Right? So it's just like people, like the 6 inches between the ears. That's why I started out with the first 3 chapters are all about mindset, right? So it's so important.
Yeah, and I love some of the analogies that you use to drive the point home, because what you're doing is you're untraining the training. We've been trained over the last couple decades that this is the way it is. You eat whatever you want. It has no effect on your health. You take these drugs, and like you said, and I loved a couple of your analogies, the smoke alarm analogy.
Yeah.
So yeah. Explain that to people, because there's a couple analogies. The fish in the fish tank was another one.
Yeah.
Explain that to people, just because it drives the point home and it makes you go,
Yeah. Yeah. So, the smoke alarm analogy goes like this. So if your house was on fire and your smoke alarm was going off, would you pull the batteries out of the smoke alarm so you can go back to sleep comfortably while your house burns down with you in it? So taking drugs is much the same, right? You're masking the symptoms. Your body is saying, hey, there's a problem here. You need to do something about it. So rather than dealing with the cause of the issue, what people end up doing is pulling the batteries out of their smoke alarms. They take the drugs to mask the symptoms. The problem's still there. They get worse over time. They end up on more drugs and medication, and then they're really not living their lives at that point, are they? They're just merely surviving and going through the motions. And that's really sad to me, So that's the smoke alarm analogy in a nutshell.
Yeah, and it's fantastic because people don't understand that symptoms are a cry from the body for help. And a lot of times a symptom may not even be directly correlated to what you think it is. It may be a small symptom of a growing problem, a bigger problem that's starting, and yes. That's why these functional medicine doctors and integrative doctors are so great. They're like detectives, they put all the symptoms together in totality, and it points to different things, which brings us to the fish. I love when you talk about, would you medicate the fish or clean the tank?
Right. Yeah, exactly.
The same thing. It's another fantastic one. So let's talk a little bit about how, because this is all about going back to basics, the way health used to be before Big Pharma really kind of took the reins, so to speak. And let's talk about what things people can do, taking out the interference. And I think a lot of people don't know what all these things are. So as many of them as we mentioned, you've already mentioned a bunch. But what are the things that people should go back to? What are the myths that you can dispel that, that they've been taught? Like, for one thing, people think that it doesn't matter what you eat.
Yeah.
And we know that's not true.
Right.
It does matter.
Exactly. Yeah. So, diet is always a good one. And then, but before diet, somebody should ask themselves, am I drinking adequate amounts of water? And what kind of water are they drinking on a regular basis? Because as you know, it's not just quantity, it's quality, right? You can drink a lot of the bad kinds of water and still end up dehydrated. So what you really want to drink is good, clean, and pristine water. And people should make a point that before diet, before anything else, they should make sure that they're drinking adequate amounts of water. I recommend to my patients at least 6 to 8 glasses of water per day. And then they're like, well, that's a lot of water, but it's really not when you think about it. If you just make sure you're drinking 2 glasses in the morning, 2 glasses in the early afternoon, and 2 glasses in the early evening, and 2 glasses in the later evening, you're fine. You just split it up throughout the day like that. And it's really not that big of a deal. And you get in the habit of doing that. And once you have a habit, then it's way easier. I've been working out every week since I was 17 years old. It's easy for me to work out. I work out 3 to 4 days a week. I never fail. I've even worked out. I've been deathly sick and still have gone to the gym and worked out. Of course, you can't do that now with all the COVID crap going on. Once you create the habit, it's super, super easy. So drinking copious amounts of water. And then when it comes to diet, very simply, removing toxic food-like substances and eating more foods in their natural state. So I call it food by God versus food by man. If you eat something in a package, you can assume that there's a lot of science that has gone into processing and making this synthetic food-like substance. So it's not really going to provide your body with good amounts of fuel, right? So eating more good, high quality, high octane foods all the way around, right? That's something simple. And for people that really want the details and fundamentals on nutrition, I always ask them, look, I mean, if you take a sheet of paper and you write down everything you eat, you split the paper up in half, and you split it into two categories. One, you have food by God, and then the second one, you have food by man. Tally up how many food by mans per day that you're eating versus food by God's, and at the end of the day, add it up, which number's higher. And what people begin to realize is they're eating a lot more food by man than actually food that is as close to nature in its natural state as possible. So if they don't have the fundamentals down in that sense, they're not eating enough healthy, good food, then why do we need to get into details about what supplements you need to take? Because the supplements aren't going to negate negative lifestyle behaviors, right? So people need to become masters at the fundamentals. So drinking copious amounts of water, eating more good, healthy foods, and removing a lot of the bad foods. A good rule of thumb to follow is the 90-10 rule. 90% of the foods you eat are super, super clean, super good, in the best state possible. And then 10% of the foods are bad, and your body can manage that. If they master that one thing alone, that one rule alone, they would fare really, really well. A quote that I live by is, calories count, but nutrition matters more. So you can't just count your calories. You have to eat good, high quality foods. What else was I going to say? And then the second thing with diet is caloric restriction works for everybody across the board, no matter what their genetics are. So as Americans, we eat way too much across the board. So giving yourself a smaller window of time to eat is the way to go. Intermittent fasting works for everybody across the board. Now, some people can intermittent fast for 14 hours in a day and be good with it. Some people longer, some people need to go a little bit shorter, but that's something that, people can figure out. The biggest thing is don't eat right when you wake up. Wait at least a couple of hours after you wake up to have your first meal, because your blood sugar is already high anyways. That's, your cortisol levels increase right before you wake up. Your blood sugar levels go up, and that's how we wake up in the morning. So if you eat right when you wake up, and most people eat oatmeal or cereal, simple carbohydrates that convert to sugar really fast. So their blood sugar levels go through the roof, and then they crash 2 hours later, and then they need to grab more simple carbs or go to Starbucks and get their mocha crap latte. So diet is important. caloric restriction's important. And then, removing toxicity in your life. And you look at, in my book, I went in really good detail about all the different ways we're exposed to toxins, right? One of them was just the plastic off-gassing in your car, right? So a simple fix that people can do is roll their windows down, crack them on a sunny day, so that so the off-gassing can get out of your car, and then when you get in your car, you're breathing in less, toxic molecules in the air. So removing toxicity out of your life, adding in more movement in your life. Most people don't move enough, especially with the advent of modern technology. Most people have desk jobs. They're sitting at a desk all day. They drive in their car to get to work. They sit at a desk for 8 to 10 hours a day. Then they get back in their car, and then they drive home, and then they sit some more when they get home because they're so exhausted. So the average person's sitting 13 hours a day, right? So sitting less, moving more is huge. And that's why I believe exercise is so important, because we're not getting enough movement. Therefore, we need to do something to compensate for, the modern society that we live in. We need to be moving more, and just moving alone helps to circulate your blood. And then when you sweat, you're actually sweating out toxins. So it's a good way for your body to detox. And plus, a big thing is you're regulating your blood sugar levels. So your insulin, you become more receptive to insulin. You have better insulin sensitivity, which is one of the things that's associated with longevity and quality of life. Insulin sensitivity. So working out, stronger muscles help with insulin sensitivity and blood sugar regulation. And that's huge across the board. So those are some very simple fundamentals that people can start doing, just the water thing alone, and if people don't know where to start with exercise, just start walking 20 minutes a day. Walk at a brisk pace, 5 days a week, 20 minutes a day has been proven to reduce your risk of having a heart attack by 50%.
No, it's great. And I think it's awesome that you go into and you talk about all the things that you're supposed to, stay away from. And we'll get into like EMFs and everything. But what I particularly liked about your book is it wasn't just about telling someone how to eat and what supplements to take. And what I really enjoyed was when you get into the whole thing about peace management and how important your thoughts are. And I really want to go into all of that. You talk about the meditation, you talk about positive thoughts, and you give these wonderful examples about the study with the person on the antidepressants or the person who took the chemo and had the symptoms even though it was placebo. Let's get to what, and we'll get into grounding. Let's get into this whole peace management, because more than anything right now with this lockdown for the last 10 months, people need that peace management. No matter how well you're eating and how much you're exercising, if you have negative thought patterns, alone can give you cancer and kill you. Right. Yeah, no, absolutely. And, the thing of it is we all suffer from stress. It's just a part of life. We all get depressed. We all have anxiety. We all, have our thoughts on what's going on, which brings about anxiety. I've had plenty of anxiety over 2020. But, I've also figured out a way to manage my stress and my anxiety, but I call it peace management. So rather than focusing on the stress, we focus on managing our peace. And it's a more proactive way to look at dealing with the stressors and, all the tribulations and adversity that we go through in life. And so, with peace management, when you're being proactive versus reactive, no matter what's going on in the world, I know every morning I'm going to get up and I meditate. I meditate for 15 minutes a day. I say all my affirmations. I have my prayer time with God. I read scripture every morning. And these are proactive ways that I manage my peace on a regular basis. I exercise
3 to 4 days a week. Sometimes I just work out every day. That's a huge way that I can proactively manage my peace. I feel good when I work out. I mean, for all the people listening to this, have you ever been so pissed off? You go to the gym and you work out, 20 minutes later, you forgot why you were pissed off. It's because movement creates emotion. And when you have positive movement, you have positive emotions. And that's a big thing that I learned from Tony Robbins, is that, if you feel like all of a sudden you're not confident, and let's say you're going in for an interview, are you going to make a sell? Are you about to get up in front of a room and speak? Like, if you lack confidence, a lot of times you can just do some push-ups, do some squats, do some jumping jacks, get your body moving. And then all of a sudden, boom, you have this incredible confidence. And it was all created by movement. That's because your physiology is deeply connected with your psychology. So movement is very good. So rather than managing our stress, what we need to do is manage our peace. So what are the things what we need to ask ourselves is, what are the things that I can do to be proactive at managing my peace? Some of it is like, what do you like to do? Sometimes I'm a big fan of Andy Griffith. I grew up as a kid watching the Andy Griffith show. So sometimes I'll sit with my 2-year-old daughter, and that's our time together. We'll watch a 30-minute episode of Andy Griffith. And why does it help me manage my peace? Well, one, it's comedy. I still find it funny to this day. It's good, clean humor. You see a town of people that actually cared about each other. And the show's a little corny at times, but I love the freaking show. And it reminds me of when I was a kid and me and my dad would watch the Andy Griffith show together. So things like that. And I feel like everybody should do some type of a meditation on a regular basis, even if it's 2-minute meditation. And I feel like that meditation should be done definitely at the beginning of the day, because how you start your day will often dictate how the rest of your day is going to go, and how you deal with all the things that day might throw at you, curveballs, things like that. You're going to be much better at dealing with those things if you started your day off with a positive habit. So I feel like everybody should meditate across the board. And in my opinion, there's no correct way to meditate. I just feel you do what works best for you. So, every morning I put my headphones in. It's all instrumental, set to a tone of 432 hertz. And the guy I got this meditation from, he recorded actual sounds in nature. So they didn't purchase these sounds. They actually went out and recorded these sounds. So one of them is like the ocean waves crashing against the sand. And the ocean almost feels like breathing in and out. And another one just has rain, and the water as it, hits the trees, and you can just hear it, and it's phenomenal. And then there's a tone that's set to 432 hertz, which is supposedly that's the frequency of the universe. So I'll put these headphones in, and I'll have my meditation track going, and then I recite these affirmations to myself. And I've recited the same affirmations every day for 2 years straight, every single morning. I've said them so many times, I know them like the back of my hand. They're completely memorized. And the wonderful thing about that is, when you memorize scripture, when you memorize affirmations, when you memorize quotes that make you feel inspired, is that no matter where you are, you can utilize those affirmations and those quotes to help you during a time that you might be feeling a bit anxious or stressed. So that's the cool thing when you memorize it.
Examples? Give us some affirmations, if you don't mind, so that people understand, how positive affirmations are helpful.
Yeah. So one of them is, I'm directed by the infinite spirit within me, and I have faith in everything that's happening in my life. I live my life in harmony with God who brought me here. I eliminate all the things that work to hold me back, and harmonize with all the things to build me up and make me stronger. I'm at harmony and peace with everything that goes on in my life. God's wealth is circulating in my life, and it flows to me in avalanches of abundance. All my needs, desires, and goals are met instantaneously by him, for I'm one with God, and God is everything. I learned that one from Tony Robbins and decided to commit it to memory. So things like that. And, you want me to give you more?
No, that's okay. And also for people who are not religious, I just want to add, they can also just say positive things about themselves, right? They could just say, I'm a really good person. I'm very generous. I mean, they can use any personal example that's positive. That's the idea of it. And you feel better after you say those things. You've got into nature, which I love, because nature is so important, whether you're staring at nature, listening to nature, or experiencing it. Can you talk a little bit about grounding? Because I think people don't realize how healing that is.
Well, right. And the thing with grounding is we're so disconnected with Earth, with our planet. And, grounding is very simply just taking off your shoes and going outside and putting your feet in sand. One of the examples I use in my book is, being at the beach is highly energizing. When you're at the beach, you see a lot of people who are active, a lot of people are smiling. Why does the beach and being at the ocean bring about so many positive emotions? You just feel good. And you don't even really know why. And it's because the ocean has an energizing effect. There's an abundance of oxygen, actually O3 molecules, which I'll have to think. I can't remember off the top of my head the book I read on this. But anyway, so the ocean is highly energizing. And just when you have your shoes off and your feet are in the sand, you're grounding with the frequency of planet Earth. And you're helping to get rid of all the negative ions that are in your body. So, throughout our day, we build up a static charge, and we can end up with an abundance of charge. And so when you ground, you dissipate all those negative ions and balance out the charge in your body. Every single cell has a voltage to it. And so one of the theories is that by grounding, it actually helps our cells communicate with each other like they're supposed to. And so we're exposed to all these external frequencies. A big one, you talked about it earlier, is the electromagnetic radiation from cell towers and our cell phones. And that plays a negative role in our physiology over time. So by stepping away from technology, and taking off our shoes and going outside and grounding to the earth helps to dissipate all that negative electromagnetic frequency and helps to rebalance out our bodies. And that's why when you go to the ocean and you're standing in the sand barefooted, that's why it's so energizing, because you're balancing out your body's frequency and you're getting outside, you're getting sun exposure, you're breathing in more fresh air. And all these things are what we should be doing on a regular basis. We don't get enough of it.
Oh, I agree. And for people to understand it, it's like the electricity releases from your body when you're grounding on the Earth's surface. It's like you could get rid of the buildup of the Wi-Fi that you've been exposed to all day, or any of that. And I also really so let's go into, talk a little bit about why EMF is not good for people, though, because I think a lot of people don't really understand the cellular damage, the buildup of it, and what it can do, because for every person it's different, right? It's not the same.
Well, right. Well, because we have our own biological makeups, so we might be similar in a lot of ways, but our genes are different, and how one person's body reacts is different from another person's body, across the board for all things, right? Some people have severe adverse reactions to vaccines. Other people, their symptoms are so subtle you can't even tell, right? So when it comes to electromagnetic radiation, the big eye-opener for me, I started studying this stuff when my wife was pregnant. And I always had it in the back of my mind, but there's something that it'll be in the back of the mind, and then something will trigger it to the surface. And my wife being pregnant with our daughter at the time was the trigger for me. And so I began to study it, and I was listening to a podcast, and there was this guy. His name is, talk about him in the book. His first name is Michael. I can't remember his last name off the top of my head. Anyway, but yeah, so Michael was a nuclear engineer, retired. He suffered an injury and became what's called electrosensitive. So whenever he would get around, computers or wall outlets and stuff, he would get really bad headaches. He'd get brain fog, was super confused. And so he started studying it, and he figured out ways to mitigate the deleterious effects of it, and was actually able to heal himself over time. And so I got on the phone with this guy, and he charged me like $75 for a 15-minute consult, and which is fine, because to me it's like, hey man, if you can give me valuable information, it's well worth your time. And he said, your wife is pregnant. You need to get rid of your wireless router. And that was a huge eye opener for me, because I had a question to him in regards to my smart meter. And he's like, don't even worry about your smart meter. If you have Wi-Fi in the house, get rid of it. And I said, okay. And so that's when I hardwired up my internet, and got rid of my wireless router. We don't have any smart devices in our home. The only smart device we have are our cell phones. That's it. As far as the rest of the internet stuff, it's all hardwired in. And so the problem with electromagnetic radiation is because it travels at the speed of light, and it goes through the body, it goes into the body, and it bounces off of the body. And it creates this chaos in our cells, because our cells communicate with each other via electromagnetic frequency. And the frequency that our cells communicate with is a specific frequency. But now you have all this high amount of radio waves, high frequency electromagnetic radiation that we're constantly being bombarded with. In fact, we are exposed to about 100 million more times electromagnetic radiation than our grandparents were, on a constant basis. It's in our cars, and cell phone towers. As you drive down the street, the electromagnetic radiation goes through the windows, and then it bounces off in your car, because your car is like a Faraday cage. It's in our homes now. We have all these smart devices. People have smart washing machines and smart dryers. And the problem is we're just constantly bombarded by it. We never get a break from it. And so over time, this wreaks havoc. Our cells can't communicate with themselves anymore. And then that can lead to all sorts of things. Cancer. My wife, whenever she gets around a wireless router, she gets migraines. So in our home, you can feel a calming effect. But when you get outside our home and start driving down the street, and you're passing by cell phone towers, you could feel a change. And before, when we had a wireless router and I hadn't mitigated anything in our home, once we made the change and wired up our internet and all that, it was like instantly you can feel a state of calm. So people are unaware of this. And, looking at the clinical research and looking at these anecdotal studies of people that would get cancer in their thigh. How do you get thigh cancer? I mean, have you ever heard of thigh cancer? Well, it's because they carry their cell phones in their pockets. Or like women would get breast cancer in one of their breasts, and it was because they were putting their phones in their bra, and they would get cancer exactly where the antenna was in their phones. And people don't realize that when you have your cell phone, it's constantly, it works as a two-way transmitter. So it's transmitting information to a cell phone tower, and then that cell phone tower is transmitting information back to the cell phone. So, and it's constant. It happens like constantly throughout the day. So it would, it's good to be aware of it, not necessarily paranoid of it, and then take adequate steps to mitigate the effects of it. So, putting your phone on airplane mode if it's in your purse or in your pocket. If you're not needing to use it, then why is it on? So whenever I put my cell phone in my pocket, it's always on airplane mode. Airplane mode cancels out information coming in and information coming out of the phone. Turning your wireless router off at night when you go to bed. There's studies that show that EMF negatively impacts sleep, whether you're aware of it or not. And I got that from the book Sleep Smarter by Sean Stevenson. He talked about Wi-Fi and how it can negatively impact your sleep. So just simple things like that. And then if you can, wire up your internet. Hire somebody to do it for you. Hire your IT guy to wire up your internet. Say, hey, look, I don't want Wi-Fi anymore. And guess what? The wonderful thing is your internet will work faster. Your computers will run better. Your streaming that you use for your televisions, it'll run faster, and you're not getting exposed to all that, all the high frequency radio waves, because everything is hardwired in. And I did a whole YouTube video on it and showed people how easy it was. I mean, I'm not a real tech savvy person. I know enough to get by, but also enough to be dangerous. And I was able to wire up my internet, and it really wasn't that hard. I was surprised at how easy it was.
Yeah, it's very easy, especially through cable, absolutely. So the last thing I want to touch on is we talked about because you have 6 tenets in the book. And,
yes.
We talked about avoiding toxins, thriving nutrition. We didn't talk about proper nervous system function, actually, but we talked about empowering mindset. But you talked about, and I thought it was very interesting towards the end, was higher purpose.
Yes.
So let's talk about why that's important, asking yourself what your purpose is. If you could discuss that a little. Yeah.
So I feel that everybody has a purpose in life, and everybody does. If you're a stay-at-home mom, your purpose is to be the best damn mom for your kids. Right? That's at least one of your purposes. I believe we have a main purpose, and then we have all these sub-purposes. But, every day what keeps me going every day is purpose. Everyday purpose. Why do I do what I do? It's because I have a strong sense of purpose. I want to get the information out to people. I want to help as many people as I possibly can. And then I also have other purposes. Like I want to be the best dad for my kid. I want to be the best husband for my wife. I want to, as a Christian, I look at everything I do as honoring God, so how am I going to glorify God? And did I glorify God well today? Some days are better than others, just being real, because, nobody's perfect. I am not even close to being perfect. So I hope nobody thinks that I'm getting off. I hope nobody feels like that's how I'm coming off. I'm not even close to perfect. We're all striving to be better versions of ourselves. So, purpose is what gets you up in the morning. It's what's going to, push you in the right direction. And sadly, for many people, they are going through the motions of living their life. They don't have a strong sense of purpose. I mean, they go to work, they make money, they pay bills, they go home, they watch TV. And then the next day, the cycle repeats. So, I became a chiropractor because I wanted to help people. I got lucky. I discovered chiropractic, and then it was like, yes, I want to be a chiropractor. And the reason why I decided to become a chiropractor is because I realized chiropractic can help people in a big way. And I am a bit of a rebel, and chiropractors are a bit rebellious. Many people in the holistic field are kind of rebels, right? We go against the grain, right? We think differently than the majority of people. And I realize there's such a need for this kind of thinking in our world, even today. Chiropractic has been around for well over 100 years now. And there needs to be more of the philosophy of holistic health, that the body has amazing power to heal itself. Even today, people don't get that concept, right? I mean, they might say it in words, but they don't really fully know it, because you could see the kind of lifestyle that they're living. If they trusted their body's innate sense to heal itself, then why are they doing the things that they're doing, right? So I think everybody has a purpose, and I think that purpose revolves around your skills, what you're passionate about, what your talents are. Like, for example, like the stay-at-home parent might not realize this, but their purpose, what they do every day for their kids, is absolutely amazing, and how they raise their kids, and every day just being present time focused with their kids and being the best version of themselves. Like, they're doing a huge service for their kids. My parents, my mom, the reason why I got into working out is because both my parents worked out, and they didn't really think to themselves like, hey, I need to instill in my kids that working out is good for them. They just lived it. And, working out became important to me because I saw my parents doing it. And so, like, parents underestimate the power that just their habits are and how it influences their kids. So having a strong sense of purpose is everything. It's what gets me up at 4 a.m. On most days. I wake up oftentimes before the sun wakes up because I have a strong sense of purpose, and I don't know. I mean, to me, like, self-improvement and empowering myself every day, and saying my affirmations, and, having goals and having ambition in life is, I couldn't imagine not having that, So, and for those listening that don't know their purpose, I mean, you could just start by writing down all the things that you're passionate about, and figure out a way that you can utilize those things that you're passionate about to influence others, to help others, and I think at the end of the day, it's growth and contribution. We all want to grow. We all want to get better. And then we all deep down inside want to contribute to our fellow man. For me, I like the fact that I have some level of influence over humanity. I like the fact that I get messages from people that say, thank you so much for speaking truth. Thank you for being courageous. And I get some bad messages too. I like the fact that not everybody likes me. I don't think everybody should like me. My whole goal is not to just, I don't want people to like me just to like me. I want people to make changes in their life. And sometimes, you're not everybody's cup of tea, and that's okay. So anyway, I digress.
No, that's great. I think I want to leave people with one last subject. Is you talked a lot about stress management and how we're all always going to have stress, especially the level that we have these days. And for everybody, it's pretty exorbitant, including the kids. But you talk about, that it's okay to have that stress. It's your reaction to it that's going to, decide whether or not that stress overcomes you and affects you. And the other thing I liked is you use some typical examples of the way people deal with stress, and some of them aren't so good. And one of them was stress eating. One of them was watching television, mindless television, and kind of just like pushing down the feelings and not dealing with them and maybe not talking about them. And some of the things that you talk about being important are stress management ways. So can we leave people with some really positive ways to deal with stress, because it's impossible, to ignore it. It's impossible not to have stress in your life.
Impossible. Yeah, that's exactly right. I mean, I actually think it's very healthy to have, anxiety in the right times. If you don't feel worried about what's going on currently in the world, then something's wrong with you. I think what we call negative emotions are actually positive. I think when we dwell on them and we become obsessed with them and possessed by these negative emotions, that's where they become the problem. So number one thing is, take care of your physiology. If you don't know where to start, start by getting better physiology, increasing your health. Increasing your health will always help you to effectively manage stress. So doing those things that, drinking more water, exercising regularly, eating more healthier foods, eliminating as many of the toxins out of your life as possible, decreasing your exposure to electromagnetic radiation, even by 10% will make a huge difference in your life and the stress. So taking a proactive approach that way. Starting your day off with meditation, that is huge. Even like 2 to 5 minutes in the morning, just start your day off. It could be 2 minutes while you're brushing your teeth, looking at yourself in the mirror. Say just 3 I am statements of affirmation to yourself. Like, I am great. I am wonderful. The whole Stuart Somali thing, doggone it, people like me. So just, starting your day out with some positive affirmations, some meditation, that's a really proactive way of dealing with this. Now, when I first opened up my business, I was extremely stressed. I was stressed over whether or not I was going to have money to pay the bills. And I was stressed, hey, how many patients am I going to have coming in today? For the first year, I didn't even have a staff member. I built it all on my own, and I would beat the pavement. I would knock on doors. So in a sense, the stress pushed me, it motivated me. So in some ways, stress can be a very good thing. Now, the negative of that was I had a lot of sleepless nights, where I maybe got 1 or 2 hours of sleep and got up at 4 a.m. the next day, and my eyes were bloodshot. And, that's when it becomes really bad. So how I started mitigating the effects of that was with the meditation. Every morning, I started doing that every single morning. I've been on my own for around 6 years now. And so I would start meditating every morning. I'd say affirmations to myself, and I would visualize what I wanted to achieve in my life. So I started visualizing the practice I wanted to have. And then all of a sudden, it was amazing. It was like the doors opened up, the floodgates opened up, and all of a sudden people started coming out of the woodworks to come see me as a chiropractor. I wasn't spending any money on advertisements. People would hit me up on Facebook. Hey, are you open today? I'd like to get in. Hey, I found out you take x-rays. I started getting referrals, from, I only had like a few patients, a handful of patients. All of a sudden they started referring. And it was because when my mindset shifted, all of a sudden these doors of opportunity just opened up because I was ready for it, and so that was a big stress reliever for me, and don't get me wrong, I still battle stress now. It's just differently. I don't really worry about whether or not I'm going to have patients coming in. Now, last year, when they started shutting everything down, I was a little worried that they might tell chiropractors that they had to shut down, but I was already of the mindset, like, I'm not going to shut down regardless of what they say. I'm going to rebel and I'm going to fight this. And luckily, chiropractors are considered essential, but I consider everybody's business as essential. If you have a small business that's putting food on the table and it's paying the bills, it's essential for you and your family. So I thought the whole idea of essential, non-essential was complete bullshit. But anyway, so that's kind of how I started. I used to be really, really stressed when I first opened up my business. And then that stress gradually started to dissipate when I started meditating on a regular basis. And the magic behind it came with consistency. So a big thing is, whatever you're going to do, just be consistent at it. It's like if you're digging for gold, right? You're digging every day, and then all of a sudden, you give up, and you were one dig away from striking gold. That's what people do. They work out for a couple of weeks. They feel really good, and then they get distracted, and then they get off the beaten path, and then they think, oh, well, it didn't work for me. Well, no, you didn't. You just didn't work like you needed to work, So you just have to be consistent. And the biggest thing, I'll tell you what, when change happens the most, it's when you don't feel like it and you do it because you know you need to. And that's when the shift really begins. So when you don't feel like meditating and then you do meditate and you're like, and then after you finish your meditation, you're like, freaking thank God I did it. You have an epiphany. All of a sudden the universe is speaking to you. All of a sudden, for me as a Christian, it's like God starts speaking to me and it's like, holy cow. And then you have an epiphany. It's like, thank God I went to church today, even though I didn't feel like it. Thank God I meditated today, even though I didn't feel like it. There's days I don't want to work out, and it's a workout day, and I work out anyway. And then at the end of the workout, I'm thankful that I worked out, So when you don't feel like it, that's when you need to do it the most.
No, I agree with you. I absolutely do. So, Jason, tell us where everybody can buy your book, because it's chock full of so many other wonderful things in there that we couldn't get to. Where can people buy it?
Yeah, so Amazon. Yeah, it's Amazon. Just look it up by its title. It's called Designed to Thrive. Or you can look it up by my name. If you type in Jason Bergerhouse, but Designed to Thrive is a lot easier to spell.
Okay. Is there anything else you want to share with people, like where to find you on Facebook or YouTube or anything like that?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, you can find me on Facebook. Just look up my name, Jason Bergerhouse. And then my YouTube channel is Dr. Jason Bergerhouse. And then our website is thrivespinecenter.com. And, the last thing I'll share with people is this concept of align to thrive. When you start making positive changes in your life, it brings everything into alignment. And when everything is alignment, mind, body, and spirit, you actually begin to thrive in life. And when you begin to start experiencing more of who you are, really great things start to happen in your life. And for anybody listening to this that might be stressed or have a lot of anxiety or maybe even depressed, just know that, there's a light at the end of the tunnel. And, when you begin to make these positive shifts in your life, it changes your perception on things. And you begin to start living the life that you were originally designed to live in the first place. So remember that concept, align to thrive. The other principle I live by is AR3. Have you ever heard of the AR3 principle?
No.
AR3 principle stands for accepting responsibility releases resentment. So when you accept responsibility for all things in your life, it begins to release the toxic poison of resentment. So that's the AR3 principle. So those are a few of the principles that I live by.
That is awesome. Well, thank you so much for sharing all this amazing information with everyone.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. It was a pleasure. And thank you so much for inviting me on your podcast to do this.
Of course.